Good afternoon, everybody. Once again, my name is Nelson Santini from Trident Proposal Management, and today we're going to be hosting a webinar on OASIS Plus, giving a pursuit update. The name of the solicitation, OASIS Plus, and again, for those who are tracking it by serial number, just to make sure we're doing apples to apples, that's 47 Quebec Romeo Charlie Alpha 21 November triple lot 1, just so we can track it by the right solicitation number. Make sure that you actually just pay attention to the key takeaways today. I'm going to add one, which is make sure that when you're speaking, you have the microphone turned on. That's always a good takeaway for presenting or for participating on these webinars. But the 3-1 that you'll see in the presentation are make sure you start your capture early. It's really going to be a long haul, and you're going to be doing some back and forth and inputting materials in and out of the system, for qualification in OASIS. So start your capture process early. In the same vein of working through your capture plan, if you're a small business and you're thinking about teaming situation, or considering joining a team, make sure you start that process early, especially if you're going to go through a joint venture. Those things take a lot of time. So make sure that you give yourself the time to succeed. And lastly, one of the goals that we want to instill to all of the people who are pursuing OASIS is to make sure that you portray your company as a company that is stout, ready to go, and it's actually easy to work with. So that's one of those elements that you're going to see that is one of those hidden gems, throughout the solicitation, making sure that you're a best-in-class company that can contribute. Just taking a quick moment to advertise, again, this is from Trident Proposal Management, founded in 2008. We're a capture management and proposal support company, veteran-owned. We provide full services, anything from pipeline development, capture management, proposal writing, and coaching and mentoring. If you want to learn more, please go ahead and hit up, to tridentproposals.com. There you can find a lot of information about the services that we provide, some of which fall under the category of capture management, and that's what we're doing here, just preparing for OASIS Plus. I'm your host, Nelson Santini, about 25 years of experience in federal government and DoD sales, over $2 billion in logged sales, through IDIQs and or task orders. I have a sales operations blogger, so if you have any questions for me, please hit me up at nelson@tridentproposals.com. The agenda for today, we're going to go through the OASIS solicitation, just review the timeline, looking at the qualification process, specifically the elements related to domains and scorecard, how to prepare JVs and MPs, and we're going to have time for Q&As. So again, if you have any particular questions, please make sure that you actually just list those on the chat, and we'll just go through them. And again, I'm here for you, so let's use the most of these next 30, 40 minutes. Fundamentally, why a new services SMAC? There's a little bit of a motherhood and apple pie, but again, the government wanted to provide an expanded professional human services capital services, contract vehicle. So we're consolidating, right? And they're looking to put the best-in-class providers. I put those in quotes because it's one of those keywords and tricky phrases situation where the government wants to make sure that they're dealing with people who have their business plan together, that they're easy to work with. They have the infrastructure to support these solicitations, right? Whether you're a small business or a regular business, large business, they want to make sure that you're best in class. The government is also looking to consolidate and track easily more their expenditures. So this is part of that particular effort. And they want to make sure that it's easy to issue task orders under these contract vehicles. So you'll see that the way that the contract is organized is 1, to track the expenditures, and number 2, to make it easy for them to issue the contracts under the task orders. Last piece is that the way that they have set up the organization of the contract vehicle allows for some flexibility between NAICS that you are qualified for and some cohorts that may not be in your core, but because they're in the same pool, you'll be able to bid on them. And again, that's actually just to give flexibility to the government as far as who they select and who does a particular work, which actually just happens to work to the benefit of the bidders of the IDIQ. Just to give you a quick peek and an idea on how big the contract is, it's a 10-year IDIQ, 5 on the base and 5 on options after that expect to be renewed. It's all for professional services, has a dual track, small business and unrestricted. We're going to be actually just bidding through blocks called domains that are going to be groups of NAICS, and it's going to have anything under the sun. So expect to have some FFP, some cost plus, time and material, and task orders underneath the solicitation. And all of that is to say they're going to be managing some $50 billion by the estimates on the palm. So it's going to be a pretty hefty contract vehicle. Just taking a quick look on the timeline, you're here, just like in the map on the mall. So if you are actually just here in the month of October, we expect that we're going to see a draft RFP coming out anytime soon. And we also expect to actually have formal RFP coming out in the beginning of the year. That would allow for evaluation through the rest of the year, and then this beginnings of the awards to be towards the end of the fiscal year, making sure that there's a smooth transition to September 2024 when the previous OASIS and other contract vehicles elapse, and then this contract vehicle will be the one that will be used. So it looks like there's plenty of time. You're just in time to make sure that you get prepared for this kind of solicitation. I happen to actually just lead a couple of other companies on OASIS, the original contract, and it does take some time. So give yourself the chance to succeed. Don't rush into it. Begin to prepare right now. As far as what to expect through the solicitation process, if Polaris, if the previous OASIS and other contract vehicles are any indication, expect that the government will have plenty of industry days for feedback sessions. Don't miss the opportunity to have your company, especially if you're a small business, be known by the government, participate in these activities, basically provide your opinion and let the contracting office know that you're interested. So kind of market your brand through this available tool, which is actually the industry days. I expect to have multiple RFIs and RFPs on iterative cycles. So expect those to happen perhaps by domain or perhaps by socioeconomic classification. So expect that we're going to have a couple of on-ramps, was a term previously used by this contract vehicle, but expect that it's going to come out in cycles. And it should be no surprise if you actually have been monitoring Polaris and other solicitations, there's going to be a scorecard grading. So there is no cap, but it's going to be graded on the curve. So imagine that you have 100 people soliciting for 80 slots. The 80 companies that have the best scores are the ones that would qualify, right? So expect it to be iterative, protracted, and you have to demonstrate that you're basically at the top of the league so that you can just qualify. So question from Sam. Yes, as I go, yes, the presentation will be available to you, will be posted tomorrow on the website for Triton Proposals, and you can download it for free along with all of the other presentations. And also, if you want to see and review all of the other videos, the videos will be available in the YouTube channel for Triton Proposals, where you can see all of the previous webinars. I'll save you some time. This one is an update webinar, so it's pretty much the same as some of the other ones. So just look, for some of the specific topics when you go to the YouTube channel, and you'll find out, which ones have some unique content, because this one is more of an update with one little new piece of information that I'm throwing in there. But good question, and thanks for asking. OASIS on the domain approach, right? So moving into what it's going to look like. So the NAICS are going to be grouped in what they are called domains. And so this is, again, where one domain will basically qualify you to bid within that block and to basically allow you to expand to other NAICS that are within that block. So let's say that you have domain X happens to have NAICS A, B, C, D, and E. You'll be able to bid anything from A to E so long as you're within that particular pool. It's kind of neat, so you don't have to basically jump through certifications and reps and certs and going through all of these things. The government is allowing you to kind of like work in a group of cohorts that look alike. And so if you're within that block, that's one of your NAICS, then you can basically bid through that particular block. So again, this is more than anything so that they can track the cost management. The benefit that's implied in here is the fact that you're going to be able to bid some jobs that are not necessarily within your declared NAICS. And so it'll be easier for you to expand your footprint. The domains that the government are going to use are actually just two major groups. It's group one that you can see on the center here, anything from engineering to facilities to intel to enterprise services. And then group two, more of your human resources, finance, and social services, right? So group one kind of looks like operational. Group two looks more administratively. I'm highlighting here in orange the ones that are kind of like expanded services, if you will. So this is kind of like an area of green expansion. And so expect that those will have substantial budget based on the latest appropriations that we've seen from the government. But these are the two major groups. And accordingly, just make sure that you're just looking at what past performance you're going to reference that would benefit you from qualifying and being in these particular groups. Moving on to the methodology, it's going to be very mathematically oriented. So there's going to be a large portion of this qualification that's going to be just like grading on the curve. So expect that, there's going to be a set of questionnaires which have been released in draft form. You can get them actually from WinGov. And if not, from our resource page, and you can also download some of those copies there. But you have your questionnaire, and they'll have what factors that are going to be weighted. So factor A may be 30%, factor B may be 40%, C, D, so on and so forth, right? And in the end, you basically just go through the multiplication of the factors that you check through the weighted average, through their weight, and then those are average, and that becomes your combined score. That combined score is going to be actually just attached to your name, and that basically allows you to have like an order of merit, if you will, where you will be able to be compared against other companies competing for the available slots. So it's very important that when you're looking at the qualification sheet, that you look at the areas that have the bigger bang for the buck and make sure that you maximize those elements there. Anything from available infrastructure, available technology, if you happen to have certifications or you have any tickets that actually just go with your company and all the projects that you have, let's make sure you basically find all those, because when you go through this checklist, you'll find out where you stand as far as the normal scoring, and that's where you can figure out how can I basically focus on showing those areas where I'm perhaps a little bit weak, or I don't have all the points that I would like to have as I score. So begin that process early. The initial draft is already out there, and like I said, you can just get it from the FedGov website, or you also can get it from Trident, from the resource page for OASIS Plus. This is again along the top of the scorecard. Again, the key thing and what the government is looking for is top tier and ready to perform. So again, look at those areas that they're indicating that are most relevant to the government, and make sure that you put your best foot forward on answering the questions there, and also highlighting your past performance. So that's actually one of those areas that, this is actually for you to actually just make your heyday. Please make sure you make the most out of it. There are 3 areas that are going to be really looked at. Number 1 is your systems and policies. So this is just to ensure that you have the right technical wherewithal to basically do business with the government. Do you have a good accounting system? Are you accountingly certified? Do you have your rates certified? Do you have certifications? Do you have an FSO clearance? So on and so forth, right? So these are the things that they're looking at, and they're trying to paint a picture that shows, hey, my company or the company that I want to do work with from the government perspective have to be ready, top tier, and we're not going to be spending the time necessarily to train them. So that's actually what you want to convey. I'm ready. I'm good to go. I'm organized. I know how to do business with the U.S. government, right? They want to make sure they're working with what they call an easy vendor. Here's one of the little gems that I'm putting here on red, for us to go through. But in the scorecard methodology, looking for qualifying projects, those QPs are going to be 250K individual task orders, right? So before you spend a lot of time looking for past performance and what you can bring forward, just begin by just figuring out what was greater than $250,000 and what has happened within the last 5 years. Project that over to the month of January, and just give yourself some room so that you don't find yourself actually building your a strategy around a qualifying project that may be disqualified because of the 5-year time window. So 5 years, and also $250,000. Very important to know that on the 5-year window is for the last direct labor that was performed. So be mindful of that. If you want to use for a project, let's make sure that when you basically qualified as a past performance job, that the last direct labor that was executed is within that 5-year window. So if you have any questions on that one, shoot me a question via email. I'll make sure that I can point out and specifically explain that for you. But anyway, providing evidence via SAT, SAT CPARs or the equivalent is going to be really important. And one of the things that I'm putting here in red, which is look at the latest news from the small business qualifications and flow downs, where the small business office has basically just pushed for the CPARs that are awarded to a prime to flow down to the associated subs under the contract. So that's an area for you to prepare. If you have worked with a prime on some of these NAICS and you actually have done a good job as evidenced by the CPARs, let's make sure you actually just bring those forward to make sure that you actually increase your scoring ability as it goes, it refers to the grading. And again, this is because you must pick the 5 qualifying performances from a minimum of X, and I need to review through the what's going to be the final number, but it's going to be from a minimum number of qualifying performances. And this is important because this is actually one of those keywords, keywords and tricky phrases that the government can use to disqualify people. What I mean is, if you have 5 qualifying performances and that's all that you have, and the government says the best 5 from a number of 7, 10, 12, that is actually just purposely done to basically limit the group of people who would qualify. So give yourself the better chance. Look for all of your qualifying performances. Make sure you actually have them ranked and stacked so that you can actually just bring them into bear. And again, right now is 5 qualifying performances. We just want to make sure that you're ready to answer of however many the government decides it should be the minimum that you should have within the block that's assigned to you. Okay, so look at your past performances now. Very important that you review those and you have them all groomed. This is just one of those slides that I'm just going to leave there for you so you can actually just look at on the scorecard methodology. One of the frequently asked questions is related to what qualifies for the 5-year window. This kind of like shows you what works out as far as qualifying performance and what's coming in and out of the window of a 5-year solicitation example. So key thing here is that the direct labor, the last time that you did direct labor, has to be crossing that threshold for you to be able to claim it. If you have any questions, like I said, please make sure you catch up with us. And again, double tap on the floor. Please make sure that you actually just consider those CPARs that you have actually just worked with larger primes, have some good past performance. Work with them so you can get your hands on those and basically use them for the solicitation. We are actually just pushing from our end, just asking questions from the contracting office to make sure that what the small business office has declared is applicable here, just to make sure that we're moving with full authority and with full information on this particular qualification and scoring mechanism. One of the things that you will not see that is actually shown here on the solicitation itself, and that is going to be like really important for you to have ready, is going to be your pricing data. And this goes back to elements that are just related to basically how you're going to be evaluated. So right now it's not one of the key elements of evaluation, but it's going to be something that is going to come back and it's going to be used very critically, for the awards of contracts and for the awarding of task orders. So make sure that you do yourself a favor, prepare your pricing data, make sure you have your pricing catalog that has been fully validated, make sure that you have your accounting and pricing systems all groomed, nicely updated, certified, and documented, right? And key thing here is that to make sure that you have your processes and procedures and controls in place. Backfill, make sure that you can prove to the government that you have everything under control. As it relates to pricing, is to make sure that you have your pricing process, pricing controls, procedures to do changes in pricing. All of these things are going to be a part of the investigation and or the certification process. So very important for you all to actually have that ready. Let's see here. The pricing will be evaluated at the task order level as far as we know, and that's what I've been tracking on the solicitation. So don't sleep on it, because although it may be at the task order after award of the IDIQ, this processes, procedures, and controls will be of relevance, and you want to make sure that you have those so you can prove factually that you are as prepared as you claim that you are to the U.S. government. For those who are in the audience, I'm not sure by show of hands is everybody's a small business or actually an unrestricted, qualifying, but just by show of hands, if you guys don't mind in the chat, if you can just let me know, do I have any small businesses or everybody's on the unrestricted segment? I'll be just looking here, but John got your small business. Perfect. Okay. And I see that Susan is also typing in here. So just give a second here just to see what the answer comes back. So small business. Okay. So it looks like we have several folks on small businesses, and that's great. Yep. Fantastic. Appreciate the info. Okay. So here's one of those elements where it's some advice and some experience, right? Bid in as many pools as you qualify. Give yourself as many chances as you have, right? And we're going to be sub-segmenting the award. So we don't know for sure if it's going to be just SDV, OSB, and micro-segmented to small business, and from then on to woman-owned, and or you get the drift. You have several classifications. We don't know how they're going to block these, but depending on which ones you qualify, give yourself as much chance as you have. Don't put all the eggs in one basket because you think that's the one that has the better chance. Put as many lines into the water as you can. Very important. Right now, one of the biggest challenges that we've been tracking on the chat with the government is the fact that they're debating whether they're going to micro-segment it or just basically bid it on a bigger block. And so that's basically, coming in and cycling from one to the end to the other one in the spectrum, right? So give yourself a chance there. This is, again, on the same point that I was discussing. So we don't know if it's going to be all small businesses in one block, women-owned, service-disabled veterans, 8As, or hub zones, right? But we're expecting that we're going to see some segmentation. We hope that it's not going to be micro-segmented, but that there was going to be enough, wiggle room in there for different groups to be put together. So again, the moral of the story is give yourself as many chances as you can. And to do that, one of the other things to consider is, as you're giving yourself a bit better chance to qualify, is consider just a mentor protege or a joint venture. These are just great tools available for you to actually just give yourself and your team a better chance to make sure that when you're looking at your qualification matrix, that you round all the bases. And so it goes back to the discipline of like build a capture plan, go back and answer your questionnaire, make sure that you actually can just do as much as you can and find out where you're gapped. And once you know where you're gapped, that will tell you the kind of company that you need to basically look for so you can team up with. Very important for you to start that process early. It does take some time to form a joint venture, to actually just form or go through a mentor protege, which is actually a more robust kind of relationship, if you will, from the purposes of scoring points. So start, on that process early on. I just put in here the bullet, expect some litigation. So expect that there's going to be some back and forth between the small business office, between people, pining and or opining as far as what, mentor protege or joint ventures will be allowed to bid. But if there's any indication what happened in Polaris, expect that joint ventures and mentor protege programs are going to have substantial leeway to actually just build a robust team and allow businesses, small businesses, to leverage their relationship with other larger businesses to actually just get a seat at OASIS as a primary entity by themselves. The next block of slides is actually just all about definitions. So I'm not just going to read them, but to actually, I think Sam was asking if I'm going to put the presentation. Yes. And one of the points is to make sure that you have access to these slides where I go through the definition of what joint ventures are, some highlights on the programs, and some angles as far as what is required from one to the other one. You can go through these at your pace. There's a good slide that comes in after the end of this particular section, right, that will bring you to this comparison, which is joint venture versus teaming agreement, right? And so you need to think through what would you like to do through OASIS and what's going to be the best for the way that you want to operate your business. But there's a good summary here that basically compares what a joint venture affords you and what a teaming situation affords you. Both of them, qualify for the use on OASIS. It matters more how you want to run your shop, what you're trying to do through OASIS Plus, and that varies from prime to prime, from company to company. If you have any specific questions, glad to basically have a consult with you and just have one of our contracting specialists tell you more details that you may or may not be aware of. But from the perspective of building your capture plan, this is important. So you'll have all of the information in one area. You can surely go back to the government documentation and refer directly there. But this is a good summary that is convenient for you to look at what's a JV, what's a teaming arrangement, and which one may be better for me from the perspective of qualifying for OASIS Plus. There's a quick question here from Sam, on this particular topic, as I'm looking here. It says, if you're going to, give me one quick second. Right, that was my camera resetting. So back on air. I hope you can see me and hear me. But here, question from Sam was, if you're going to partner with another business, must it be a formal JV, or can you simply team with another business? And is there a limit on how many small businesses can partner together? Okay, so a couple of questions in here. So it doesn't need to be a JV, so it's not a must. But we observe that they do carry more weight when it comes down with the government, and that's related to some of the elements of your next two questions, which is, can you team up with another business? Yes. And so when we're looking at the evaluations and the grading criteria and the points awarded on the qualification matrices, you can see that JVs, have a little bit more weight, and the government is also looking and digging into the claims to make sure that the relationships are just not relationships that are brand new, right? So back to best in class, back to working easy. The government is looking to work with companies that have worked together, that have teamed up together. So it's more important that you have a past performance history of collaborating with a company than that you kind of, that you can say have worked with them for 3 or 4 years, than basically just forming a joint venture right now with the same company, right? So it's one of those things that, the time that you have worked and proving that you can work with this entity with whom you're making the joint venture is more important and relevant than just how much time you've spent with them, right? So it's kind of like, you've got to find a sweet spot. One thing that raises eyebrows, and we saw that in Polaris, was where these couple of folks had just basically made a connection just for the solicitation, is valid, but it's one of those things that kind of raises some eyebrows and asks some questions as far as the viability of the business and or your ability to perform. So JVs are not a must. You can definitely go through the teaming. It's a matter of how robust of a case you present. And so the answer is, unfortunately, it all depends. And I hate to give you that answer. And the last question is there a limit to how many small businesses can partner together? And so I have not seen anything hard written on the solicitation. It's one of those that you don't want to basically have everybody under the tent and build a coalition of 20. And again, it's one of those that 2 or 3, it's one of those that in my past experience, 25 years doing this, usually doesn't get an eyebrow, but if you go past that point, people are going to begin to ask questions and it begins to look like a coalition. If you're going to go through that process and you're going into more entities, perhaps a joint venture would be more practical as far as how that is structured together, just to reassure the government that you're going to be an easier company to work with, right? So back to it all depends. If you have 3 companies on a teaming agreement, I haven't seen problems with those before. In as much as trying to put 6 or 7 companies into a teaming agreement becomes a little bit of a pain for the government. And quite frankly, from experience, when you have too many people like that, if you get the award, and we hope that you do, managing 6 companies on a teaming agreement becomes a little bit more squishy and hard to do than when you have a joint venture. So be mindful of that, and glad to actually just answer some questions of that. No charges, give you some past experience on, why you don't want to basically work with 7 or 5 vendors in a teaming agreement for a task order or an IDIQ. Okay. And did I answer your question there, Sam? Check. Good. Excellent. And if anybody else has any questions, please, again, just let us know. Glad to answer any questions one-on-one later on. Again, no charge. Just our job is to make sure that you have all the right information, and we want to make sure you're in a good spot. Okay. So key lessons, or messages for OASIS. It takes time. It should show that you have an established relationship, which is what we've been discussing here. Thanks, for the lead-in Sam's question. It is an investment. It's not cheap, right? And so understand that this is going to take some time from your internal team, dealing with attorneys. Anytime it basically talk attorneys, basically the meter starts running and you're just spending money with them. So it takes time, and money. So it's an honest investment and it's material. So if you're a small company, be very judicious on how you go about this particular element of doing a teaming agreement, and make sure you collaborate with a team prime, if you will, that actually has the resources to afford, and they can actually just be like a godfather, if you will, in this particular relationship, just bringing you along and helping you cover some of those costs. And start early and have a plan. I mean, key element on joint ventures is just have a plan. Make sure that you have a good business case and be as clear as you can on what that relationship is going to be. Just spare no details. Trust me, you want to do this in advance. The government has been using some keywords and tricky phrases throughout the solicitation. So they're going to have quote unquote targeted representation, tier 3, best in class, easy to do business with, commodity and service pricing. It's almost like reading tea leaves, but one of the key things to actually just look in here is the fact that targeted representation means that they're going to be selective into who they're going to be bringing in on board. And so let's say that you have 3 companies that score the same and they're competing for a particular slot based on the available seats, if you will, in the solicitation. Targeted representation is the government's way of saying we'll choose whom we want. So again, be as compelling as you can so you're high and above in the points that you score, and you have a compelling case that says, pick me, don't let me out of the action. Tier 3, best in class, I think we've covered that one, which is make sure that you show your best foot forward, great qualifying projects, something that is really robust that basically sets you aside from the competition. And again, have the controls, the procedures, and the processes that shows that you are easy to do business with. So the more of these tickets that you have checked, the better off you are. And expect that you're going to have a little bit of commodity and service pricing in here. This is a services contract. So not necessarily one of those contract vehicles where you expect to be making rain in fee, but that's actually what the contract is for commodities and services. So expect that to be the case. So shameless plug, how to prepare. do yourself a solid and to conduct a bid no bid, right? Is this business for my, for my company, right? And so get yourself to a place where you think, yes, this is a must win, or this is one of those that we really have to bid for the future and for the benefit of the company. If you meet the requirements, by all means, I would encourage you to do that. It's a beast, right? 10-year IDIQ, $50 billion, just a lot of money to be made through the contract vehicle. But all the same, conduct a bid no bid, because in the worst case, it will help you basically show to the rest of your management team, we have to bid OASIS. We find ourselves short because we're not going to be able to do all of these other bids, right? You have to keep the lights on, bid on other contracts right now. So companies like Trident, Shipley, and others can help you find the elastic resources that you need so you can keep bidding the other business and chase OASIS, or vice versa. So do yourself a solid and figure out, what's the cost of opportunity, and make sure that you're chasing OASIS because it's the right thing to do. Build your capture team early. Make sure you have them identified, because this is going to be a long haul. And at the very beginning, there may be some times that you'll need to kind of review some documentation. Build the time early and let people know that you're going to need those resources available when the time comes. So declare them early. Make sure that you evaluate your team situation early on and declare the roles that everybody's going to do. That way, when the documentations are being requested, when updates to the solicitation happen, you'll be in a better place to respond. And I cannot tell you how many companies we've seen going through the pain in Polaris where the teaming situation was not ironed out perfectly. And there were some changes that came through, and we had to help them just go through the complete process of what are the changes here? What is the implication there? How do we basically move the scores and the cards, and just keeping all of the records current? So do yourself a solid, evaluate the teammates that you have within the company and outside of the company. Make sure that everybody knows roles and responsibilities, right? And lastly, build yourself a budget for your in-house resources and your 1099 pool. Back to my previous point, if you're bidding OASIS, and this is actually a beast to do, and it's not impossible, but it's going to take some time. Make sure that you have enough resources for you to continue to bid the business, because you're not going to see money coming through OASIS until 2023 at the very earliest, sometime in 2024. So make sure that you're basically putting your lines in the water for task orders and other contracts that are going to continue to fund the business while you chase this one. So give yourself a good budget and make sure that you actually just get the resources that you need. Words of wisdom: organize your qualifying performances, build your pricing catalog, check your NAICS, make sure that you actually have all your records and reps and certs already done and certified. So make sure that you have everything updated. Organize your CPARs, review your certifications, and review your systems and procedures. Again, you can do that right now. It's one of those lessons that we learned. The more we sweat in peace, the less we bleed in war. Make sure that you do all of these things early on so that you're in a better place to actually just bid successfully. And so with that, I'm going to pause in here for questions and on the new content or anything that I've discussed today. A lot of information. So let's see what we got over here. Is there a way to identify all companies that are part of OASIS? Yes. So you can definitely find this information is available through your local search engines. It's available on Deltek, on WinGov, and the like. So you can see all of the companies that are in OASIS would be available. And it's fair to assume that a fair block of them are gonna be bidding OASIS Plus. So that's a good place to actually just go and knock on their door, and at the same time, kind of like figure out, who could be your partners if you're looking for people to work with or team up with. So absolutely start with that list. That's a list of suspects. If I had a contract like I did, on OASIS, and I were in your shoes, I would definitely, belly up to the company that is easiest to actually just have a joint venture and or teaming and basically bid this particular contract. So yes, absolutely. Yeah, you can get that list. If you have any questions on that one, we can help you do some research on that as well. But yes. Any other questions that I have from the team? I see Jennifer. I see actually just Joan. Anybody else? Kim, Nicole, Sam, Shannon, Susan. Any questions? All right, outstanding, Joan. Great. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. I hope that it was. Yep, no worries. Sam is going to ask. Okay. Another question comes in. And Jennifer, thanks a lot for joining in. Glad to have you in the audience. Always good to have a shipmate backing up. See, Sam is actually typing away, and we'll just take a moment here just to let him, pose the question. Okay. It's my understanding that, so Sam's question is, it is my understanding that you can utilize past performance from non-government. If so, How does that work with the CPARs? Okay, so you will see that in the checklist and the qualification checklist, there's some leeway and there's some weighted credit towards non-government versus CPARs, right? So the short answer is yes. How much point in credits? I mean, that's all going to depend on what the final scoring card will be. And so, yes, you can bring them to bear, and you have to prove that they actually just are relevant to the work. So they do carry less weight than CPARs, and so that is one of those things that they're giving people some leeway, especially for small businesses, so that you can use relevant past performance that is not within the government. But in what I've seen on the scorecards, it's just not necessarily giving you as many points as you would get from a proper CPARs or work with the government that it is not CPARs related, where you can perhaps get a letter of recommendation from an end user and or KO. No worries. Well, excellent. That's all that I had for today. Just a shameless plug. If you want to find more information, make sure that you actually head on over to tridentproposals.com/OASIS. There's a good resource page in there with materials, posting, blogs, good articles that basically give you some perspective on OASIS. And so we want to make sure that you have as much information as you need. If you want help on bidding the solicitation, if you want help on having a third party evaluate, you can find more information at tridentproposals.com. This is what we do. And again, our goal is to make sure that you have all of the right information so you can actually just put your best foot forward and qualify for OASIS. So if there is no other business, I'm ready to adjourn, but one last round of alibis. Any questions from the floor? Looks like we're all squared. Going once, going twice. Excellent. It's been a pleasure to actually just host you today. This is Nelson Santini from Trident Proposal Management signing off. See you next time. All the best.